Hi, and welcome to Freshwaves. I'm your host, Bren. Today we've got part 2 of our AirBnB series. We're talking today about renting your property. You've got a property, a cottage, or a space at home that you want to rent. We're going to talk about how to become an Airbnb renter. And last week we spoke in depth with Ashley Kortsidas about how to pick an Airbnb, how to choose the best one. And if you'd like to hear that show, you can go to our YouTube channel, Freshwaves Radio, and you can hit subscribe while you're there because we love to have subscribers. And you can listen to the show about how to choose your best Airbnb. And we were pretty good at covering most issues. If you have any questions or you'd like to contact Ashley, we'll give you her contact information throughout the show. But today, we are talking about renting your own property. Good morning, Ashley, and welcome to Fresh Waves.
Good morning. Thank you for having me back.
Well, we had promised everybody last show that we would spend the first half talking about choosing one and the second half talking about being a renter. And then we just had so much to talk about in choosing your Airbnb that we didn't have time. So we're doing 2 shows, which I think is great. And that way people can hone in on what they're really interested in. And I will say before we start that there are many platforms right now, and it seems like every day there's even more. I would say that, you know, the popular ones, Airbnb, VRBO, there's a bunch of different ones. It would probably be in your best interest if you are thinking of renting your property to check them all out. But to go with a legitimate long time standard as opposed to some fly-by-night organization that may not have the marketing tools behind it. So, okay, Ashley, give everybody a little bit of background of how you got into being an Airbnb Superhost.
Yes, thank you. So I've been a Superhost for 8 years, first listing my cottage property up on Airbnb, and it was a wild success, and it ended up birthing hundreds of stays. I've had almost 300 reviews and been able to garner and keep my Superhost status for the last 8 years, which I'm really, really proud of. And throughout that time, I've been able to acquire another property, build on it, in which I also host out on Airbnb as well. And so it's just been a wonderful experience. And now I'm coaching and teaching and co-hosting and doing a whole bunch of things to help others have the same sort of success because it's just been life-changing for me. So I'm really happy to be here and talk about it.
Great. Now you have a young family. And I know how busy people get when they have a young family and little kids, and 3 of them actually, and they have to go in all different directions. So obviously you've managed to find some sort of a work-life balance in the chaos of having little kids.
Yes, it can be fun. I think there's never enough time in a day, and I'd love to duplicate myself on most, but I actually been able to run my first Airbnb as a complete side hustle while working a corporate 9-to-5 for years. And it was only within the last 3 years when I added my second property and some things changed at work and it went really successfully for us that I decided to actually leave the 9-to-5 and do this full time. So that's how successful it can be for somebody in terms of a income replacement and steady income if they choose to become a host and share their space. So having a great network, having a team on the ground if you're not there as much, wonderful cleaners, guest communication in place, a co-host if you need it. All of those things can certainly help. I manage most of it on my own and then, turn into mom when the kids come home, but in bath and bed and all those good things. And then I get up and start it all over again. But being a host can take, 24/7 hours of service, and you need to be available for your guests throughout the night if there was an issue or an emergency. So I've come quite accustomed to it, and it's actually quite fun and exciting. So I would say it's definitely doable, even with 3 kids.
Yeah. Well, I think for you, you have 2 well-maintained properties that you are Airbnb-ing. And when you have a well-maintained property there's less chance of somebody calling you with an issue at 2:00 in the morning than there is if you're renting out a dilapidated old piece of junk that, really shouldn't be rented. And so on that note, how do you determine if the property that you have is suitable for Airbnb?
I would say you'd want to be thinking about being the guest yourself. If you're the host and you're the owner of the space and you're looking at your property thinking, can I do this? Would someone want to stay here? Put yourself in the guest shoes and reverse the role and say, okay, what would I want here? What would I want to see when I come to a space? What amenities would I like? What would make things easier? Do I provide linens? Is my space safe and coherent? And is it accommodatable for families or couples or whatnot? So you kind of want to nail down who your guest might be, and stepping into your own guest shoes is a great way to kind of figure that out.
Well, some people actually are more attached to their properties than reality would dictate. It's the same.
I
Real
agree.
estate agents find that all the time. They go and say that somebody's house is worth, for argument's sake, $500,000, and they'll say, "No, it's not. It's worth double that. Look at all these beautiful things." And then the agent has to say, "Well, yes, except that, they haven't been updated since 1952, and chances are, with a few improvements, you might get a little bit more, but you're not going to get that much." So, how do you? You're a co-host. How do you talk to somebody about their property and say, okay, reality check in. This is what your property is worth, and this is what we think you can do, and this is what you should do in order to rent?
Absolutely. So coming at it from a host perspective myself, because some co-hosts that you might find out there don't own their own property. So I would say if you're looking for a co-host, look for an experienced one. You can search within the platform itself for one in your area that would be vetted and actually certified through Airbnb. So that's where I would start to go first, opposed to all the other corners of the internet, so that you're having someone like a real estate agent who's vetted in the area and understands how to look at your how to look at your listing with a clear lens. So from a host perspective, you have to step back. You have to be able to share your space with people. You have to be comfortable with people coming in and sleeping on your bed and using your washroom and things like that. So you do have to sort of form a little bit of a detachment and kind of put on your business hat if you're able to do that, especially if you're living in the home or the space after you're renting it. Secondly, I would say when you're also looking at this either from a host perspective or a guest perspective, look at the surrounding areas. Look at who your competition might be. When you're starting to think about putting your space up, what are common nightlies in your area? What are other people offering? Not necessarily your competition, let's say, but what would you look like in the sea of your area if you were to put up your space, and kind of see if you'd be able to market it properly, if you would fit in, if it would be accommodatable, if it does look like other properties in the area, how can you stand out? How can you make yourself different? I would start with things like that to be able to move forward from there.
So what exactly is a co-host?
So a co-host is someone like myself who is vetted through Airbnb. I've signed up and asked Airbnb to be a co-host, and their platform is very, very new. It started this fall. It's ramping up, and it has some wonderful things coming, and it is the only platform out there currently that I'm aware of that actually has a co-host capability. So someone who is experienced in the field to be able to help you with your listing from soup to nuts. And you can, of course, vet your co-host in terms of what your needs are. You might just want someone to help you with communication. You might just want someone to help you get your listing up and running, do an audit on your listing per se, look at it, optimize it, spruce up your pictures, all of your descriptions, make sure it's all nice and proper and safe and reliable for somebody to book on that platform. And then you want to be able to start looking at other things like your location is set properly, your SEO is set properly, your nightly set properly, and a co-host can help you with all of that. And then you can either continue to host the space yourself, or you can hire them, add them through the platform, and they become a co-member, so to speak, a co-host on your actual listing, and they'll be seen there by guests who are looking to book. And then you can coordinate with them that they will actually receive a payout, a portion, a commission, so to speak, for their services. And Airbnb, when a person stays with you and then you get paid for that stay, they will actually portion out the payment to the co-host directly. So the platform's taken responsibility for the e-commerce side of things, so that the host doesn't have to worry about paying this person for their work on the side. It's all taxed, legitimate, all kind of proper within the platform. So it's a really safe space for owners to be able to go and access help with their actual listing. And then you're getting a vetted eye. You're getting someone experienced, that can help you make more money.
Before we go further, when you first have that co-host person into your property to see if it's even viable, like if it's even a doable thing, do you have a fee for that?
So that's another thing. Because it is so new, when I started it, I added my services on the platform. I created a profile and I added in a percentage of commission. And then from there, when people find me on the platform, they contact me directly. I usually book a call with them. And now in advance of that call, because I have found that it can be hours long and I feel like I have to ask them all of these questions, pull information out of them. I don't want to miss anything. I want to be able to educate them on what I can do in the best way possible, but without having them feel overwhelmed on the call. So I've actually, I do a free call, a free consultation. And then if they'd like to work with me, I provide them with a package. I've created a package. I've created a host questionnaire, which is really wonderful. And I actually send that prior to the call. So that way there's about 20 questions that we can go through, so I can really have an idea of the space, what their intentions are for the space, what their intentions are for me as a co-host. And then they have the opportunity to ask me any questions that they would like to discuss on the call. So I found that that's been a really, really helpful way to set us up for a really successful and productive phone call. And they feel really good about it going in. They kind of have a sense of a bit of structure before I call them, because a lot of people aren't sure where to start.
Exactly. And I think that if they have a set of questions to ask themselves, that's a great place to start, because even the fact, I know somebody in my neighborhood decided they were going to rent one of their rooms in their house to Airbnb. And they didn't do their homework, and they ended up renting and making a big spiel about it everywhere they went. Oh yeah, if you're having a businessman coming into Toronto, you can rent my room. And they didn't even know that in the bylaws of where they live, it wasn't allowed.
Yeah, that's another thing that a co-host can help you with too. For us, in the Northern Kawarthas, there are 4 municipalities that have come through with the short-term rental bylaw, much like what has been implemented in the GTA and other surrounding cities, and particularly in Toronto. So I actually help people understand what the bylaw means, what they need to do to be compliant and apply for that. I cannot host their space. I don't suggest that they list their space without receiving that compliance first. There is a section within Airbnb that you can go to and input your permit number. So guests want to be looking for that if in that area. It's just another way to show that it's a vetted and properly safe to rent space. So I help them with that. But then after the phone call, I typically send out a package, initial services to do a site visit, help them with the initial documents for the STR, and give them an entire listing STR? Report. Short-term rental.
Okay.
My apologies.
Just so people know.
Yes, absolutely. And give them an entire report on what I think they should do, what I think they're doing great, how the space could be better, and how it can be optimized as a rental on Airbnb. So typically for that, my package is about $350 to start, and that includes my travel time and all of my optimization. I start up the listing for them within that. If it's fresh and it's never been on Airbnb, we do photos, all of those sorts of things, and get it up and done properly. And then they can add me as a co-host through the payment section after if they'd like to continue working with me and have me help them with all of their property management or their guest communication. Obviously, I take on not too many because I believe in quality over quantity. It's another thing you want to look at when you're vetting a co-host is that they don't have 100 different properties, because how much quality time are they spending on your inquiries? Mm-hmm. And I take on a small amount of clients, and it's actually really picking up and booming, which has been wonderful. And it's getting people excited about sharing their space, but knowing that they can do it safely and properly, and then I educate them through the entire process.
Okay, so somebody comes to you and they say, I have a really nice house and I'm an empty nester, my kids are all gone, and I'd like to rent out 2 of the rooms, and I want to rent them out not for the whole year, but say for the month of February and the month of April, just pulling 2 months out of my hat. Is that allowed? How do you take them to the next step?
I would have them fill out the questionnaire and confirm the times that they want to host the actual spaces within the home, have a very detailed conversation, and probably followed up with a site visit. Mm-hmm. I would want to see the space myself and understand how the 2 rooms are accessed, what community and shared spaces there are, what safety mechanisms and compliance are in place so that the host feels safe if someone is sharing a room. If there's direct access, if there's shared access, how they're accessing the property. I think that's really important when you're sharing a room. You need to really think about, you don't know who's coming in. They might have a wonderful profile as a guest, and that's something that you want to look for, and a good history of reviews. But if you're sharing a particular room, I think it's a whole other ball of wax that I would really go into even more depth with those people as to the shared and common spaces, because you don't want to be cooking dinner and then have your guests come up and your children are there. It depends on kind of the parameters of how the space is going to be divided up. Mm-hmm. So I think that's really important. So a site visit for sure. Even if it was a cottage property, let's say, I always like to do the site visit, because especially if I'm going to be talking to your space, to your guests, I'm treating it like it's my own. I am being you. I'm vetting them. I want them to have the best experience, but I want your property to have the utmost respect. And I need to be able to know that if they have a question about the lights or the water or whatever it may be, I can, without bothering you, understand the space, the rooms, the amenities, how it operates, so that I can then talk to it.
Well, a funny story about a friend of mine who rented a cottage in Haliburton last year, and she was doing a course at the college up there at Haliburton School of Art and Design. And so the amenities looked fantastic in this property. She rented the entire cottage. What she didn't realize is that the only washer and dryer on the property, because the owner was living in a cabin sort of just down the way a bit, and the only washer and dryer was in the main cottage that she was renting. And so the owner was back and forth doing laundry all day long, all evening long. She's got guests there and the owner's back and forth. And it turned out to be quite a crazy situation. The owner was sweet, and she was an older woman who, again, her children had all moved out. Her husband passed away the year before, and she needed to make some money from the cottage and figured she'd rent out the main cottage instead of the cabin. And, she was kind of learning as she went along. Mm-hmm. But as the person renting the property, it's a bit disconcerting when you've got the owner there, if you don't think that the owner would be there. You know what I mean?
Exactly, exactly. I think that's something too you want to look at in the property details and the listing on the actual platform is any notations about shared services or shared spaces, just so that hopefully before you come, you're aware that someone might be coming in to do the laundry, and perhaps that can be a communication piece through the messaging is just, I understand there's shared laundry. Can you give me an idea about how often that space might be shared? Is someone doing laundry every day, or are they doing it, once a week, or perhaps maybe no one's doing it during that time that you've selected for a stay. So yeah, I would consider that important.
And then maybe you as a co-host would be able to meet with this woman before she put it on Airbnb and say, okay, what do you need out of this building while you have guests there? Do you need to use that washer and dryer? Okay, how about you use the washer and dryer on Saturday during that time when nobody's there? Or, I don't know, it's just something that should have been done long before they got there.
Absolutely. And that's the education piece, just the extra set of eyes to be able to say, okay, this might come up and you might have this. And I suggest that, if somebody does inquire and we have a booking that, these 10 things are absolute requirements through the guest communication piece that need to be verbalized to the guests so that they're made aware ahead of time, for sure.
Mm-hmm. And I think something like the bedding, some cottage rentals, you arrive and there's no bedding. You got to bring your own. And that
absolutely.
I mean, you need to know that in advance. It's probably not a big hairy deal, but it's at least you should know about that before you arrive. So is there a spot on the listing? P.S. No bedding.
Yes, absolutely. So within the property's amenities, you'll be able to see a very detailed list that an owner or host or co-host rather can indicate and check off every single thing that would be included with the stay. So you would want to look to see if linens are provided. You also would want to, if they weren't, be asking and clarifying before you come what type of bed it is, what size it is, is there a mattress protector, are there pillows, all those sorts of things so that you can arrive prepared for your stay. Absolutely.
I think since COVID, a lot of the places that I've seen advertised say that they have sheets, but bring your own pillows. That seems legit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Seems legit, I guess. But, all of this changed with COVID, right? Nobody ever thought of bringing their own pillows before COVID hit.
Yes, and I think you want to be able to, again, look at the reviews and see if cleanliness is spoken about and how the space has been left for people, even with or without COVID. But I value myself on a reputation of cleanliness, spotlessness, and sanitation. So after every stay, I mean, even down to the pillows, everything is all taken care of, all laundered, and there's protectors on everything. Because you also don't know, when you're treating your space sort of like a hotel, people can come with bed bugs or, God forbid, other things. Yes, and then that might be entering your home. So it's another whole safety piece that I educate my hosts on in terms of the linens. I have wonderful suppliers that I suggest they go with. I always suggest crisp white linens for the look, and then also for the laundering to be able to bleach it and fully sanitize every single set that has been used. I really always suggest that. So those are just a few things that I definitely go through, but you definitely want to be prepared.
Yeah, and last time part one, we talked about as a renter, you're going to rent a property, how to look and make sure that it has all the amenities that you want. But when you're talking about becoming the person who's renting a property, it's equally important that you are giving people the right directive. And on that note, we're going to take our first break here on Freshwaves. I'm your host, Bren Masson. This morning we're speaking with Ashley Kortsidas. She is a Superhost and a co-host for Airbnb. We're talking about how you go about renting your property. It could be a side gig to just make a bit of money on the side. You may want to turn it into a full-time thing if you have a property that you're not using and you want to make some extra cash. So do stay tuned. We have all kinds of tips coming up right after the break. This is Fresh Waves. We'll be right back. We're back on Freshwaves. I'm your host, Bren Masson. Today we're talking about renting your property on Airbnb. What's involved in making that first step to become an Airbnb renter? We're talking with Ashley Kortsitis. She is a superhost and a co-host. She helps people put their property on Airbnb. So Ashley, in the first half of the show here, we were talking about this package that you give to people as a starter when you're a co-host. And I was wondering if you could let our listeners in on what those questions are so that if anyone listening is thinking about, starting to rent their property on Airbnb, that they at least know those initial questions and what to look for.
Absolutely. I would first start with I have about 15 to 20 questions, and it starts with what's your property address? How many bedrooms do you have? Is it seasonal? Is it winterized? So I can kind of look at where it is, what the directions would be, how accessible it might be for somebody. Mm-hmm. And then I also want to be able to go to, do you have a cleaning team in place? Have you ever rented before? What are your expectations out of this? How often do you rent the space? Do you live there? Or do you go there sometimes if it's a seasonal property and you're looking to fill up some of your interior dates or blank dates with visitors to be able to pay the bills? Also, if you have any type of budget for an investment, if the property needs any upgrades, if perhaps there are things that I deem to be maybe not safe or not compliant to be able to share your space with somebody that you might think are okay and you're used to, do you have a budget in place to be able to make some upgrades? Are there any seasonal changes in terms of water, access to the property's surroundings on the exterior? Are there things that need to be considered about the time of year that you rent? Do you have a check-in flexibility? Are there certain times that you wouldn't want to have people in? A pet policy? And do you have any co-host expectations of me? Those are some of the questions that I run through with people just to kind of have a good foundation to understand what this might look like and how they can share their space.
Well, I can only speak from my own experience. When we were out west, for example, we were renting a place in Panorama, BC, and on one of the amenities that the property listed was ski in, ski out. Mm-hmm. They said they were right on one of the runs. So in my brain, I'm thinking, okay, I ski down the hill and I ski into the property. And then in the morning, I ski out the front door, grab the lift, and up the hill I go. In fact, there was a 50-foot sheer drop from the hill to this cabin. So you definitely could not ski in. And skiing out, after a 15-minute walk down the road through the golf course to the small lift that gets you up to the big lift, sure, you could ski out, cross-country ski maybe, but certainly not downhill. And of course, we didn't know the area at all, so we couldn't see that was really not true. But once someone's lied to me, I instantly have my spidey sense go up and I think, what else have they lied about? So how does a person list their amenities when they're trying so hard to make it as appealing as possible for people to rent the space? So they want to be honest, but they also want to make it sound good. How do you draw that balance?
Yeah, so that would actually, the ski in and out is actually a descriptor on the actual site that the host or co-host would be clicking off. So if they're going to click off a ski in and out, I agree there is a due diligence there to be mindful that is that really what people are reading and thinking? Can they actually do that? Is it feasible? They could also choose to not include that. It's not actually considered an amenity. It's more of a descriptor for the space, like a lake or a cabin or a luxe property or something very unique. Airbnb actually has a category, a list of categories and descriptors that hosts can attach to the listing. And that kind of helps in terms of people's search engine availability and SEO when they're trying to look for a space and what they might want out of it. opposed to where an amenity would be a washing machine, linens, cooking utensils. So the ski in and out and whether there's water access, things like that, those are actually found in a descriptor. So they could remove that. I would say if someone is booking a place with the intention of doing a specific activity like skiing, have that talked about in the communication piece ahead of time. Just confirm how close it is. Hopefully the listing might actually come with a guidebook. There's a complete other section where hosts can update a guidebook which shows local amenities, attractions, eateries, a whole bunch of things to do that are local and around town. And when you click on them through the listing, it should be able to tell you details, including the address. So you could say, I see the ski hill is close by. How would I get there? You could kind of ask those questions ahead of time. I would, as a guest anyways, just to be extra thorough, so that you're not faced with a long cross-country trek that you thought would be quite
the opposite. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
then
exactly.
as a co-host, if you're helping someone to list their property, would you be able to say to them, okay, you have a laundry machine, you have a washer and dryer. Do you want people using it? And if the answer is no, I don't want anyone using my washer and dryer, then no, it's not an amenity then, so it shouldn't be on that list.
Agreed. I would have them take that off. I would confirm all of that ahead of time, including with the cleaning portion of things. So whether or not they're cleaning the property themselves after, and there's an expectation there that it's 5-star, or if they are having a cleaning service if they are doing the linens with that, if the laundry is included with that, if they want the cleaner to take away the linens and not do them on site, all of those things are factored in ahead of time.
Now, do these things that we were just talking about, so you're not letting them use the laundry machine, you want them to bring their own linens, say, you expect that the place is kept relatively clean. Do these knock the price down a bit?
Yes, they should. I think it's a fair assumption to be able to say if you're taking some core amenities away, like laundry services or linens, and there's an expectation of the guest to not have that included or bring their own, that should be reflected in the nightly rate. I think it's only fair. That's how I operate. That's how I suggest others to operate. I'm sure there are those that don't, unfortunately, but again, it's just about kind of looking out for that piece. And then again, if you're not sure within the listing itself, reach out and then start to talk to it so that you can have a very detailed explanation.
Mm-hmm. And are there certain selling features? Like, I know personally what would be a selling feature for me is a fully equipped kitchen. And when I say that, a spatula is in there. Because I tell you, it's really hard to flip eggs with a fork.
Yeah, a wine opener. Yes, a fully stocked chef's kitchen. Absolutely. That's I would say top 5. Yeah. I would also say a huge indicator on Airbnb. So I have been told at an Airbnb conference, many co-hosts were talking about this, and the statistic that Airbnb threw out was that those who have a hot tub tend to book 50% more than those who don't.
Wow, isn't that interesting?
Yeah, I guess there's a lot of people out there looking for a hot tub. I personally don't have one. I have electric saunas at both of my cottages, and I have a cold plunge. And then, of course, we're fortunate enough to be right on the lake. So I haven't added a hot tub yet. I would say for people not necessarily to be enticed by, oh my goodness, based on what I've said and what Airbnb's told me, you could get 50% more in terms of bookings, but you have to think of the back end. You need to have somebody servicing that weekly. Typically in a northern cottage community, that's $100 a week. So you need to build that into your budget and understand that it has to be maintained. What if someone has an accident in the hot tub? What if someone is sick in the hot tub? What if someone comes in with oil on their body in the hot tub? There are all these things that you need to consider, and you can absolutely have one. It's a wonderful amenity in addition to any property. But on the back end, you need to be understanding of the maintenance and the diligence as a host to keep that amenity perfect. So it's just it's something to think about. It is a little bit maybe easier to outfit a kitchen with all the fixings and not have to worry about it. So you kind of can pick and choose which amenities might work for you and which ones you want to upkeep. But the hot tubs is a huge qualifier for people. They actually search for it. So hot tubs, saunas, pools, perhaps. I guess it would depend on the location and the season, but people are definitely looking for that experience piece. I know we talked about that last time. They're not just looking to come to four walls. They want to know what they can do there and how they can maximize their stay.
Mm-hmm. I've always been surprised, quite honestly, at the way many of the listings underplay the lake. I mean, a lake is a fantastic thing. It provides a beautiful view, boating experience if you choose that kind of thing, a canoe or a kayak or a paddleboard, to lie on the dock, to sit on the dock, to have a campfire at night overlooking the lake. I mean, the lake to me is such a draw, but that's just a personal thing with me. But I find that on a lot of the listings, I'm getting more information about kitchens than I am about the place I'm going to, the actual property. And that brings me to my next thing. Is there a place where you can say how accessible things are? Like if there's 45 steps down to the waterfront, I have a friend who's handicapped. There's no way they'd be able to get down to the lake with that many stairs, or seniors or whatever. And so a level lot, which seems to have no definition whatsoever. I like this gentle slope that ends up being a hill for a mountain goat, but a level lot to the water. Those kinds of things. Are there places where you can add that in as a benefit to the property?
Absolutely. I think definitely utilizing your photos, that is huge, because unfortunately you are being a book judged by its cover, so to speak, in that people are looking at those photos, and if they don't catch their eye and fulfill what they want out of that stay, they're going to move on to the next listing. So clear, concise, multiple photos. The wonderful thing about Airbnb is they allow you to categorize them and add a descriptor in. So that's something as a co-host or a host you want to be doing, maximizing your thumbnail picture to grab the most attention, and then having everything properly categorized and labeled. So you'd want to be looking for that. There's also a whole section within the listing when you first set it up that goes into the arrival guide, which is the portion of your listing that will actually be sent directly to the guest prior to check-in. That has house manual rules and accessibility. So you can see it on both ends when you're looking to book it, and then once you also book it and it becomes in an arrival guide, it will show you how the property is accessed. So as a host, you need to show the path in. You need to say whether it's wheelchair accessible. Is it lit properly? You actually can list a lockbox or entry information, codes, where it can be found. I often always encourage people to add a photo of where the lockbox is, so that people have a clear idea when they're coming up where they need to turn, where they need to look for. You don't want it on a shed 20 meters away from the door. Is the path well lit? Is it accessible all seasons? What's it like in the winter? Is it maintained? Is it shoveled? All of those things are all things within the app that you can absolutely fill out and make sure that they're readily available for guests to see before booking.
Yeah, and it would seem to me that if you're going to rent your property, these are, again, things that you should be thinking about.
Absolutely.
Who are you going to rent to? What is your, one of the things that I like about your property is that you have the charger for an electric vehicle. That's become something that you have to have now because so many people drive and show up in their Tesla.
Yes, and that's something I tell all of my hosts is like, how can you make your space more environmentally friendly, more eco-friendly, and more friendly, user-friendly? Because times are changing. You obviously want your space to draw the least amount of footprint it can. Saves you money in your pocket for electricity. Hydro is not cheap. Delivery rates can be double and triple in some rural areas. And for us, adding the EV chargers, we have level 2 EV chargers, and they weren't too much of an expense. And it's a wonderful amenity that's actually probably paid for itself, 30-fold. The closest station for charging is located in Minden, which is about 45 minutes south of our location in Halliburton. And in order to do that, someone has to sit at the charging station, sit in their car, or maybe get a coffee across the street and wait hours if they need a full charge. Where we found if someone can come to the cottage, be able to drive up there, save the money in gas, which is why they bought the EV in the first place, and then sit at the dock, listen to the loons, have a beverage while their vehicle charges at the time. That's an amenity people want to have. And with the amount of EV vehicles kind of exploding, it's a whole nother population of potential guests that you can open yourself up to.
Well, as a person who's thinking of putting their place up for rent, how would you, within the platform, put that big red sign that says, no partiers allowed?
Yes. So the house manual, the house rules, and the guest communication piece. So
okay, but that's not right
are...
off the bat, though. I mean, off the bat, you've just got your basics, right? It's 4 bedrooms, heads in beds, sleeps 12 people, quiet, serene. I don't even know if those words are in the initial output, but that's what I'm saying. If someone's looking at your property and thinking, 12 people, yeah, man, I can have my graduation party up there. It'll be a blast. We got the lake, and they may not be the renters that you really want. How do you deter that?
I think it really comes down to guest communication. There are sections within the listing that you can very clearly have rules and make it apparent that there are no parties allowed, or events, or fireworks, or commercial photography, whatever it may be. I wouldn't suggest putting it in your title. It might deter on an SEO perspective. You can certainly add things like serene, quiet, adjectives that would really draw someone in based on what they're looking for.
Right.
And then quite quickly down within the property details with asterisks or, specific kind of indicators, you can say there are no parties allowed. You also have people accept and acknowledge rules. That can be a guest communication piece. You're vetting them. What are you coming for? What are your intentions here? Look at their reviews. And then also state flat out, this is not allowed at this property. Do you understand that? Are you accepting of that? And they're putting that in writing on the platform. Mm-hmm. And then you need to be able to manage that stay. You need to not be too far away, be understanding of it, and know what is happening there, whether you have people around, you have exterior cameras. All of those things are ways to be able to monitor and ensure, a responsible stay.
Mm-hmm. Now, are you allowed to, as a person renting your property, have external cameras on the property that are on while the people are there?
You can have them on. You can have external cameras, that is. Airbnb has taken away the ability to have any interior or within a shared space. Let's say someone's coming in from a side door and there's like a shared mudroom. The determinations on that have recently changed, but you can absolutely have exterior cameras. You just have to acknowledge it, and you have to make it very apparent and clear on your listing, which you would want to do. I mean, you want to let people know that there are cameras there for perhaps off-season times, or to be able to know when someone has left and have your cleaner in, things like that. I like to not necessarily have them on while they're there because I respect people's privacy, and that's another communication piece, but you have to label and very clearly state where they are so that the guest coming understands that beforehand.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's one thing if you're living next door or relatively close by. It's another thing completely if you're 2.5 hours away and someone's renting your space. I mean, I actually said to somebody once, well, it's really neat when you're renting your place that every year that family shows up and then they have another family come who has their own trailer and they park on your driveway. And the lady looked at me like I had 5 heads. She said, what do you mean, another trailer? Oh. She didn't realize that the family of 4 that was renting her place had another family that would arrive on the Monday and stay for the entire week in a trailer on their property, but using their septic, using their bathroom, their kitchen, and all the common areas. And they had no idea. So they weren't renting to 4 people. They were actually renting to 10.
See, it sounds so unfortunate, and there's only so many ways you can vet someone if they're going to be defiant, deviant, and not tell you about that stuff. I mean, I would say make sure your house rules and house manual are airtight. Have everything from we do not allow motorhomes, we do not allow this. If there are more people found on the property, fines or expulsion may be applied. You want to be very clear, and I find if you vet this ahead of time and you ask questions about who's coming and the total number of guests, how many are staying, how many perhaps are you having any visitors locally throughout the day, you want to be able to confirm all of that just to be the most prepared host you can be. And generally, 95% of the people are pretty honest, I'd like to say, and they don't want a negative review on the flip side. But yeah, unfortunately, there are a few that will try and squeak that through.
Take advantage of it. But, in the world where it seems like 10 years ago, maybe even less than that, people were always going to hotels. And in a hotel, you can't just show up with an extra 6 people and hope that they're going to sleep all over the floor and in the bathtub and everything. That just doesn't happen. And I don't think, therefore, it should happen at an Airbnb.
I agree.
Are you allowed to, as a renter, say a maximum number of people that I would like to have at my property would be 6?
Oh, absolutely. That's set in a listing, and it's communicated ahead of time, and the guest has to actually input the number of guests that they want. So if you have 6 or you can accommodate 10, perhaps anything over 6, there might be an additional guest fee that you can apply because there might be more wear and tear on your systems. There's a bunch of ways in place that you can confirm how many people are coming and set your own limits as a host.
Okay. Now, what about as a person and I want to keep telling people over and over again that right now we're talking about you have a piece of property or a couple of bedrooms or the basement of your house, if that's allowed in your municipality, and you want to rent those spaces out in a short-term way. We're not talking about full-time for 3 years. We're talking about 3 days to 3 weeks kind of thing. What about the concept of having a property management company helping you with the property if you don't live close by?
Absolutely. So there are several that you can search online. I would search depending on your area, whether you're in the States or you're in Canada or you're in Northern Ontario. There are different property management companies that can do things. A lot of it is automated, but you want to be having boots on the ground. You want to have your cleaner in place, your maintenance person, if something breaks, if there's a plumber needed in the middle of the night, those type of things. So if you are going to be taking on a property management company to help you or a co-host, you want to make sure that they have access to those types of services and networks.
Okay. Now, what about if I know there's certain things that fall under the cleaning staff, but there's certain things that maybe cleaning staffs don't do. I don't know. Do they change light bulbs?
I think that would be up to the host and the co-host to have that conversation with your cleaning team. So for me, I have a couple wonderful ladies that clean when I need them. I have a backup cleaner, and of course I'll go in and get my own hands dirty and do whatever I need to do as a responsible host if someone can't make it or there's an issue, anything like that. So having a high amount of extra amenities on site would be good for turnovers. You want your cleaner or maintenance person to have access to extra light bulbs, toilet paper, paper towels, all the cleaning products that they may need, dishwasher tabs, you name it, all the extra linens. I suggest having 2 or 3 sets per bed so that there's always a clean set. And if anything needs laundering or it can't be laundered, all of that is in place ahead of time. And that your people have all of the amenities and products that they need. Okay, so that's really important.
So when you're thinking of renting your property, then you have to have some sort of idea of, I'm renting to maximum 6, and they're going to be there for a week. How much toilet paper do they actually need? Because maybe I shouldn't be leaving the whole case out there. Maybe I just leave 5 rolls. I don't know. People steal the craziest things.
They do, unfortunately, and that's something to consider. I used to leave toilet paper for the whole stay, and I found people were using too much. And if certainly on a septic system or something more rural, you do not want that kind of strain on your systems. I have signage in every washroom advising what can and cannot be put down into our toilets. And now I leave starter toilet paper. I advise them to bring eco-friendly paper, and I don't leave as many. I'll leave one on the roll and one or two extra. It depends on the guests coming in and what their requirements are. But generally, I don't leave things out, have everything in a lock cabinet. Leave them with starter things. But again, in the communication piece, you want them to know that you do need to bring things to sustain your stay.
Right.
If you need them, they can be located and purchased at X, Y, and Z. So that way they know what they're coming to and the guest expectation is set.
So when you're calculating as the person considering renting their property, you're saying, okay, you've done a little bit of research and you know that Joe Smith down the way, he's renting out his cottage and he's getting $2,000 a week. In what world? Okay, so he's getting $2,500 a week for his 2-bedroom cabin, and so that's $2,500 a week in my pocket. That's not really the case, is it?
No, there's all sorts of underlying costs and back-end things for a host to consider. So you want to do a budget ahead of time. I think you want to do a concise type of spreadsheet, and your host can kind of help you with this in terms of understanding what fees and strains might be associated, what costs might be elevated for you, as in electricity, the laundering of things, the strain and use on your systems. Can they handle that type of back-to-back? Let's say if you're renting 3, 4, 5 weeks out of the summer, what does the wear and tear on the rest of the property look like? Do you have to have your cleaners in more? Do you have to have your maintenance person in more? All sorts of those kind of things you really need to understand and have your costs set, or have a good idea of what it might budget to you. Is it going to cost me $500 to operate for the season? Probably. Is there propane that will be used? Is there gas that will be used? And the refill of those amenities and costs. If something breaks, do you have kind of a slush fund to be able to fix it or replace it for the next guest? So I would say you need to have a healthy budget. But you can also kind of build that up. Maybe take a portion of your first stay. You get your first booking, you make your $2,500. I would always suggest to people put $500 or $1,000 away, so that if anything happens, you're not feeling stressed in the moment to come up with funds to rectify something. But I would say $500 to $1,000 would be fair to operate for quite a long time, as long as you're having good people and you understand your bills. Maybe your hydro is going to go up a little bit, but on the back end, you want to be having at least a 70% profit compared to, let's say, a 20 or 30% deficit in terms of bills. So you want to make sure that it is profitable for you to be able to do this.
So if somebody's been listening to this show now, we're running out of time. How can they get a hold of you and learn more about what you do as a co-host and what you can do to help them to get their property ready for the season that they want to rent it in?
Absolutely. Thank you. I would say anybody can reach me either under thecedarshalliburton.com or on Instagram at thecedarshalliburton, or my actual co-host page. My teaching platform page is at Assets with Ashley on Instagram. And my direct digital storefront is linked in my bio there. I provide templates for people, host packages, everything from welcome guides to how to co-host. And then you can book a call with me through that platform. If anybody wants to start up their own Airbnb and have a listing, I do have a host link that I can provide to you, or if you know other host, they should have their own link that they could provide to you. That would get you $67 in a refund after your first successful stay. And I can go through and I provide guides for people and all sorts of things on how to get up and running, adding your property, the photos, the listing description, property amenities, configuring pricing and booking, discounts and promotions, house rules and policies, and then of course any local regulations to consider. So, and then you're ready to publish your listing and start sharing your space and making some really decent revenue off of it, if that's your intention. So I'm happy to speak to anybody, even if you just have questions and you're not sure about the space, what it might look like for you. I'm always available. And Airbnb also on their website has a wonderful set of different guides and blogs and information if anybody's looking to learn more about the platform itself.
Okay. And then if you are not really an Instagram user, you can always send your question to me, Bren, at freshwaves.ca, and I'll get your information over to Ashley, and she'll get back to you, because sometimes for seniors, that's how we do it, the old-fashioned way.
Absolutely. Facebook, email, phone call. I prefer to do it that way, too.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Ashley. We've learned a ton of information, and if anyone wants to hear this show again so they can just figure out how it all works, you can go to our YouTube channel, Fresh Waves Radio, hit subscribe while you're there, and you can listen to part 1, which is how to choose your rental, and part 2, how to become a renter. It's a great package here on Fresh Waves. Thanks again, Ashley.
Thank you so much.
Okay, have a great day, everybody, and we'll catch you again next week on Fresh Waves.